1. Hello. So this has been something that I have been wanting to post about for a while, and something that has been occurring since I was a kid. You see, something has been following me, watching me. Let me start from the beginning, though. When I was about 6 or 7, I lived in my old house. I was in the basement and about to head upstairs for something. I think I wanted a Capri Sun, which was the shit back then. So my basement was laid out so that the stairs had 2 different directions you could go. Left led to the basement proper, and right went into a small computer room, which led to a laundry and storage room. I was standing at the bottom of the stairs when I remember feeling like I needed to look to my left, toward the computer room. I saw it, and it's the only time I've ever seen it dead on. The figure was tall, black, and had no features, just the shape of a man. I could tell he was looking towards the laundry room, but noticed me and just turned his head toward me. I just looked at him, not sure what to do, but not scared. In fact, I just kind of acted like it was one of my parents and didn't react much. It then faded away. Not surprisingly for a young kid, I told my parents who had my eyes tested. Just fine. But since then, my visits from my invisible friend continued. Every now and then, I sense him. When he's around, he is always in the far corner of whatever room I'm sleeping in. I feel his eyes just staring at me, watching me. The weight of its stare kind of just permeates the room. Of course, it's not always while I'm sleeping or in bed. Sometimes it's in my car, and even walking along to class sometimes. But it's primarily in my own bedroom, wherever that may be. And yet it's not every night. It's every once in a while, almost like a checkup visit. This continued from my old house, to when my family moved, to when I was in my college dorm room. I currently attend UMKC Conservatory of Music, and every now and then I'd sense something standing in the bathroom, which I usually kept the lights off in. I've even sensed it while sleeping at a boyfriend's house a few times, as we were in bed together. I have a few friends who see spirits and auras and stuff, and while I am a pretty convinced atheist, I do believe in spirits as they are made of energy, and energy is something we can measure, and I feel like they may exist. Deities, on the other hand, totally not believable. I know, seems like a contradiction, but whatever. So anyway, these friends have all described this thing, and all the same way. Big, black, and very protective. AKA didn't want to mess with it. When I ask if it's positive or negative, they can never say. Currently, I live in my own studio apartment by myself, and thought it was done with me. I was wrong. A few nights out of the 3 weeks or so here, I've sensed it again. I have been listening to Ouija board stories recently, and have gotten to thinking about it more and how curious I am to know what it is, where it came from, and why it is following me. I'd like to believe it was a spirit that just liked my energy and decided to follow me around. But you never know. I'd still be curious if I need to somehow be getting rid of this thing, if anyone has any suggestions on how I can get answers about this. I want to know what this thing is. I'd be happy to listen. 2. Let's start with a short background. I'm an 18-year-old guy, and for the most part of my life, I lived on the countryside of my state with my parents and 2 brothers, in a big, roomy, and somewhat far-away house. My folks still live there, with my 2 older brothers. Let's call them Fair and Dan. As of me, with the regular flow of things, I ended up going to a bigger city to study law. Some minor occurrences. I was 12 years old, and my family lived all together in the house. The events of this post will relate to a certain room of the house, which is Dan's room. His bedroom had a PC, and on weekends I would often negotiate with Dan to sleep there. so I could Skype friends during the night, while he slept in my room, which is beside his. I was that kid who loved to stay up late, and while on Dan's room, I recall vividly hearing footsteps outside of the door, and I went to investigate what were causing them. All I found was just an old, quiet, and empty house. This turned to be a customary event. While in there, I would hear not only footsteps, but loud bangs on the walls, windows that somehow no one in the house managed to listen. Sleeping in Dan's room was rather difficult. These events were the first difficult to explain experiences I had in the house. Number 1. Fast forward 15 years, I was living in a university town of my state, and no longer with my parents, which I visited on a weekly basis. At this time, I had a musical group in my hometown, and whenever we could on weekends, I was there. We gathered in to make some noise and have fun. I was therefore going back to my parents' house after one of those meetings that went really late into the night. I entered the house and everyone was sleeping. It was nearly 3 a.m. I laid in bed and tried to concentrate on sleep, but I was a bit agitated. So I just started browsing Reddit. 10 insomniac minutes passed when I heard the tangible sound of feet hitting the ground in a great speed. Whatever that thing was, it came running at an inhuman speed from the very back of my house, passed in front of my door. I could just see a shadow, projected by the bathroom light that was on. Entered Dan's bedroom and laid on his bed. I heard the springs. What you feel at this time is difficult to explain. You enter a mixed state of panic and alert. The silence that ensued after that was absolute. I stayed in my bed motionless, trying to figure out what to do. 15 seconds passed. My bedroom has a mosquito net covering the door. It was fucking balancing, caused by the figure that ran past it. All of a sudden, Dan started screaming. Not startled cries, but panic screams. I jumped out of my bed and entered his room. When doing this, I can only describe that I felt a very bad feeling, kind of a negative energy that has taken the bedroom. Dan was lying all wrong in his bed, his legs crossed, his head to the side, his 2 hands were near his mouth. There was nothing else in the room, and the screams were gone. I stood there for a minute, and all of a sudden, Dan wakes up. He looked at me with a puzzled look and asked what was going on. I said nothing, of course, and that he should go back to sleep. I told this to my family the morning after. Dan became really terrified, said he had a weird dream, but the others kind of laughed about it, telling me I was half asleep, which I wasn't. Number 2. This year on a road trip to my hometown with my parents and Fair, we started to talk about paranormal stuff. I brought up the story above again. And again they were skeptical, but this was the start of a series of stories about the house, which they, my parents, had never told me. According to them, when they bought the house, my now dead grandma slept one day there. She was kind of a mediunic person that I never knew much about. She slept in the room that, in the future, would be Dan's room. The morning after, she complained that she heard loud bangs on the roof, not like plumbing noises, and that the house was haunted. She even advised my parents to give up the house and look for another one. But skeptical as they are, they turned down the advice. Number 3. On the same road trip, my brother Fair told me another story involving Dan's room. When he and Dan were small, I wasn't born yet. They were doing a lights-off pillow war with 2 other cousins. Where? Of course, in Dan's room. According to Fair, someone hit him really hard, even for a pillow, in the face, and he became really pissed off and left the game. After that, everyone that was still in the dark room started being hit really hard by someone that they thought was Fair. He had left the pillow war and was in the living room being a pissed-off kid. They eventually turned on the light to stop the game, and they found out that he wasn't there. Hearing and experiencing all those events made me wonder if Dan's room is really haunted, and what may have happened there. 3. Sorry ahead of time if I make no sense. Just over a year ago, my sister got married, so she ended up moving out of my parents' house to go live with her significant other. My sister's room was a little bit bigger than my room, so I ended up moving into her room and getting her bed when she was gone. Now, I've never experienced anything weird like this when I was in my old room, which is right next to my sister's room. But every so often in my sister's room, I'll experience some pretty weird stuff. Also, we are the first people to live in this house, 18 years old, and this is a pretty new neighborhood. Every couple of weeks to every couple of months, I'll be laying down in my bed, not long after I've turned off my light, when suddenly I hear a single, quite loud knock coming from either my headboard or my wall above me to my right. After I hear it, I look towards where the sound came from, only to hear a second knock that is twice as loud as the first one. It is always 2 knocks about 5 seconds apart, and the second knock is always louder than the first one. I have no idea what could cause this noise because my room is in the corner of my house. My bed is in that corner of the room. And I have a full bed, so I only sleep on the left side of my bed, away from the corner. I would like to think that there is some explanation behind this, but it only happens either right after I've turned my light off and lay down in bed, or when I'm starting to doze off to sleep. I've never heard it during my waking hours, and I would hear it, because I spend a lot of time in my room every day. Online homework and I have no life. And the knocks are loud. Also, I'm a college student, so I go to sleep at 1 a.m. This next incident happened not long after I first moved into my new room. I'm pretty sure this was just some weird sleeping thing that happened, but it was still really freaky. I was sleeping in on a weekend and I was just starting to wake up when suddenly I feel what I thought was my dog jumping off of my bed using the side of my face for leverage. This obviously made me jump up, freaked out, and I looked around but I couldn't see my dog anywhere. At this point my face felt this burning, stinging feeling. I immediately went and told my mom about it, but she told me that she was with the dog the whole time, so I don't know what that was, but I vividly remember it felt like my dog jumped off of my face. I had the burning, stinging feeling in my cheek for a few minutes after it happened. Weird. I have these metal blinds in my room that make a distinct noise whenever you bend or move them. About every couple of days I hear what sounds like someone flicking or pushing on one of my blinds. It never makes sense for it to make a noise because my dog isn't in my room. There is nothing that should be pushing them. Often my vent isn't on and there's no way any force outside of my window would be able to move the blinds. To end it off, this isn't really something I've experienced myself, but my gaming chair squeaks like crazy whenever someone sits in it. And often when my mom is home alone, she hears what sounds like my gaming chair squeaking. I'd like to think there is an explanation for these. The first one freaks me out the most, but I'm not really sure. 4. So when I was younger, I had woken up in my granny's house quite suddenly in the night, but didn't think anything of it. I was 9 at the time. All my family had come over from round the world, and us kids just thought it was for a visit, although no one had told us my granny was very poorly. So in the morning my auntie from America had come in. As I was the only grandchild of many that was staying over that night, she had shut the door and sat down to talk to me and said to just stay in the room for a bit. Then I didn't know what had happened. I mean, I was 9, but without even thinking I just said, "She's dead, isn't she?" My auntie didn't know how to take it, but I had got up and left the room while she was asking 100 questions about why I said that. She was creeped out, I guess. So after her trying to get me back in the room, she eventually said, "Okay, you can see her," after the funeral people had left. For some reason, the guys in black suits didn't scare me, even though I knew why they were there. So they left and I went in. I couldn't cry. I was devastated. She was the person I was closest to my whole life other than my mum. But I didn't even feel like crying. So I spoke to her and fixed her hair and told her how beautiful she was. Later that day, all the family had come to see her and say goodbye, and myself, my brother, and 2 cousins were told to sleep in her room that night, so the adults could sort things out. Basically, who was taking what and what was happening to the house. I decided to sleep on the floor. I don't know why, because it was a big bed, but I sat playing with her bottle of holy water before sleeping. I am religious in no way, and dozed off. Then, for some reason, again I woke up, but she was there. I mean, I'm so adamant I saw her. Clear as day, just standing, smiling at me. She always used to call me her angel. She mouthed this, but I heard no words. I screamed because I felt scared to have seen her. I woke up everyone in the room and told them. Still to this day, they say I made it up and was dreaming. After everyone went to sleep, I felt a soft brushing through my hair. She used to do this when I was sad. I swear, I'd seen her. Was I just imagining this, or had anyone else experienced this? Edit. We slept in the room after her body had been removed, of course. Just thought I'd clear that up. 5. I have been living in my apartment with my boyfriend for almost 2 years now. It's part of a building with 2 other apartments. It's shaped like an L. So there are 2 apartments side by side and 1 apartment on top of my neighbor. So, I have no one above or below me to cause any of these noises. And I have never heard either of my neighbors next to me because they are hardly ever home. When we moved in, there were very few items from the previous occupant. A few bandages in the bathroom, a few plastic pictures in a closet, a small cheap vase under the sink, and a cheap bookshelf. The first few months I noticed no unusual noises, and I loved it. After about 6 months I started noticing footsteps in the kitchen, but I ignored it. If there was a ghost and it wanted to check out my dirty dishes, I had no problem with it. Then one day while I was standing by my dishwasher, a white blur flew through the closet door and went through the opposite wall. It was as tall as I was and reached all the way to the floor. After it passed through the wall, the oven mitts hanging by the stove started swaying quite hard, as if a huge gust of wind hit them. There were no open windows, doors, or air vents anywhere near them. I thought nothing of the blur because I believe in passing spirits. I assumed it was just someone on a mission to get somewhere, and my apartment just happened to be in the way of its journey. For the next few months I would still hear the occasional footstep or shuffle from the kitchen, and one day, a very stable stack of dishes toppled over in a terrifying crash for no understandable reason. Basically, I'd accepted that there could potentially be some kind of energy in my kitchen, but it had never bothered me, so I wasn't going to bother it. Well, my no-care attitude has changed greatly after what just happened 2 nights ago, December 14th. My boyfriend went to sleep as usual, and we're probably both completely out by 10 p.m. Now his story and mine are very different about what happened at 10:40 p.m. His version is simple. I started screaming, not "ah" screaming. The horrible, blood-curdling, hair-raising screams that burn your throat like fire. I was laying on my back, rigid as a board, eyes closed, and screaming like I was being murdered. He shook me awake, yelling my name. I opened my eyes and started yelling in fear. I was screaming, "Turn on the light! Turn on the light!" And once it was on, I asked him if he saw the orb. He didn't. And that was the end of it. All night he shivered and was scared and on edge. My boyfriend has never gotten cold at night in the last 2 years of sleeping together. Our bedroom is 70 degrees and we have plenty of blankets. And he's incredibly hot-natured. He also never gets scared. My version is a bit different. I don't remember a single bit of screaming. I woke up to him frantically saying my name. I opened my eyes in our dimly lit room, and I see a giant black orb hovering above my eyes, about 2 feet above me. That's when I started screaming for him to turn on the light. As I was yelling, the orb traveled towards the wall, and I watched it pass through it and disappear. The moment I had a chance to breathe, I realized the room didn't feel right. I can't say why or what it was. It just didn't feel right. My boyfriend claims that he saw nothing but was focused on my face, and then the lamp on his opposite side. Since this occurrence, my apartment has just felt a bit strange. The next day, the light in my room flickered, but I want to pretend the bulb was just dying. I lit white candles and placed them in each room. Last night, when I blew each one out, I said a prayer asking for protection and for the spirits and evil to be rid of my home. The first room I started in was my bathroom, next to my bedroom. As I said the prayer, there were 3 loud bangs from the wall between the bathroom and bedroom. I never heard a noise like it, and there was no one in the bedroom. I have now put a cross in each room of the apartment, and put a Bible in my bedroom. I also should include that almost daily when my boyfriend leaves for work, I have nightmares after he leaves. They are always about a ghost or spirit. It's almost always invisible or a shadow. But in this morning's dream, the spirit possessed a person in my dream to talk to me. I don't remember what it said, but I know it was bad because I kept running from it in terror. Please, someone help me. Update. My father and sister came last night and prayed, and I burned sage in each room. But I was too afraid to try and sleep after my boyfriend left this evening. Later today, I'm going to try another blessing. Thankfully, there was no action last night. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, episode 29. Thank you very much to everyone who allowed me to use their stories in this video. And if you can offer any helpful advice for the people who have allowed me to use their stories, then please do click on the links and go through to the Reddit post and you can post your advice there. Or you could leave it in the comments, because hopefully most people will come and check their stories out. Well, let's see, where are we now? This is a Friday. I'll have a TIFU for you guys tomorrow, and I'll hopefully have a TIFU for you guys tomorrow. If not, we'll have more scary stories, but I'll try my hardest to get one up. I'm also hoping to have a nice lazy weekend. I've had a few important bits of business to take care of this week. Not YouTube business, just other things that have to be taken care of and finished up at this time of year. And if I've got it all done properly, I'll be giving myself a treat for being a good boy. Any excuse really, to be perfectly honest with you. Okay, and with that I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.